Showing Up For You is a space we want to use to talk about things that might not have been discussed in your household, your upbringing, or everyday surroundings. I'm Shon, and I'm here with my niece Jasmine, and we want to show up for you. You ready for this?
We are back for another episode of Showing Up For You. I am so excited to talk about today's topic.
Yeah.
Father's Day just passed.
Yeah.
So we thought that it would be a good opportunity for us to talk about dads, our relationships with our dads, and just the nature of that in general. We want to recognize that what we're sharing today, it might not be everybody's experience, but I think that we can all learn a lot from experiences that other people have. We have grown from what we're going to share today. We have grown so much from, the relationship that we have with our dad. So I'm super excited for us to just dive into this topic because I think that there's so many people who can relate, but also let's take this as a learning opportunity because you and I have different experiences as well. So I'm really excited to talk about this together.
Yeah. Yeah. This is fun. This is exciting.
I want to ask you, what's your experiences like with your dad? What's the nature of your relationship? Share a little bit about that.
Oh man, my dad, he wasn't really around when I was younger. Now that I'm older, I understand what happened. He and my mom didn't have like a great relationship. I think they just both weren't prepared to be husband and wife, right? And of course, when you have 4 kids, wow, that affects the family. So he wasn't around. He was kind of in and out. He was a fun person when he was there, but we spent more time without him. When he did come around though, like it didn't seem like he was doing bad without us. Like, you know what I mean? Like you kind of like, you're like, he must be worried about us, right? Like, no, like dude would like show up, driving a new motorcycle. And it's great, which is fine. Like, you know what I mean? But like, he seemed fine with the way things were. That lasted for like, I want to say 10 years between like my being 7, him being in and out of the house to like me being, I want to say like early teens, right? When I was in high school, he kind of came back around and I think he had more freedom to come back around. I would say less legalities by that time. And so when he came around, it seemed like it was only specifically when I was doing something that drew attention. And so, naturally you're like, oh, you like when I do this, so I'm going to do so much more of it. Yeah. Right. Like I remember not seeing him for a very, very long time. And then like one day he shows up at a track practice with like a Gatorade and a banana, like a single banana. And I was like, oh my God, like my dad, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I hadn't seen him in like, I wouldn't say like half a year maybe, right? And so that like communicated to me, like do the things to get him around because these were things that drew attention to other people. So it gave him something to be proud of. Yeah. Fast forward to like late teens. By this time, I think me and my sisters were kind of just like over it. You don't want to ever chase anybody. And we just didn't have a great relationship with him. And simultaneously, it was like as soon as we were over it, I think he, at the very same time, hit a point in his life where like he was lonely. Like maybe his real friends weren't there, or maybe he had like a awareness moment or like a enlightening moment where like, oh my God, I messed something up. And so he was like making this change of like, I want my family now. But we're all like grown, right? Right. So we're like, hey guy, what's up?
Like you fully have your life developed at that point.
I'm in the middle of college, or I'm like going to college. I'm in the middle of college. Sorry. And it was just, we wanted to be, part of his life, but there was already established routines. I'd like to say that because of whatever might have happened in my dad's personal life, he was forced to change the way he treated other people. And that affected his daughters. Yeah. So he made this full-on turnaround And it was almost like he was trying to make up for lost time. Where that failed was like, you can't discipline me. Chill, right? But then it was like, okay, we can try, right? And it happened to be like right around the time of my wedding. So he was around to walk me down the aisle, which I think he cried more than I did on my wedding day. Right?
Whole lot of tears. I was there. I was there.
It's weird. So
I'm a witness.
Right. We were like, what's going on with this guy?
Right.
But it was special because he, like I said, there had to have been a moment of all the things that he had done to come up to that point that might have hurt the people in his life. And now he was finally like able to be a part. Right.
Yeah.
And so fast forward to now, my dad is actually a really great grandfather. Like, he's fun. And I'm like, oh my God, am I that fun? Like, he's fun. And I hate that we don't even live in the same state, but like, my kids love him. And I'm glad that they don't know the him that I knew, the not nice person from the beginning of our relationship, right? To like, they know like, Papa is so fun. Yeah. And like, he does the funny voices. He makes them like learn things. He like challenges their mind. Like, he's just great. And I'm like, where was this?
Right. Like when I was growing up.
Where was this when I was growing up?
Yeah.
So it's now our relationship is good, I feel, because it's open enough to be realistic. Like, hey, we're here now, but like, you know, we weren't here before. And now we can have that honest openness so that my kids don't experience what I had to experience with you. And I'm grateful for his maturity because I see like redemption. I see like grace. I see patience. You know what I mean? And like, I just kind of have to understand that I don't understand why at one point in time, a very long point in time in my life, that he was the way he was. So I hope that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I know him. I personally know him, like, now that we're family. And yeah, I want to echo what you said. He is a cool grandpa.
He's so cool.
Like, he said, your daughter a karaoke machine, and I'll be tearing it up with her.
Like, he did. I was like, I never got a karaoke machine, sir.
Right.
I would like one.
But we got a full band now. As adults.
Right. He's really great. And he's really great.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you kind of like have a layout of what your relationship with your dad looks like?
Yeah. In my experience, my dad was actually we were never underneath the same roof my whole entire life. There was never a moment that I lived with my dad. And so our journey looked a lot different. From the beginning of my life, like, my dad, he was there, from my memory. I'm still pretty young, and so my memories can only go back so far. Right. But, he was around, and then I have memories like built there. And then my dad made some decisions that landed him in a place where he was confined, and that prevented us from being together. Right. And that had a really heavy effect on me. Wow. And I didn't realize that until later in my life. And so, during that period, I was young and I was growing. I was, transitioning. I was developing my personality. I was becoming, the young lady that I was becoming. And then in high school, fast forward to high school, my dad was back in my life in a more active role. Right. And we had so much fun together. Like, almost like that she's a daddy's little girl kind of feel. Like, wow. We would go, and our thing was, I love baseball. And I love baseball because of my dad. Go Mariners. Go Mariners, right? Opening day of baseball. That was like our thing. We would go to games. My dad is an athletic trainer, and so he knew athletes, and we would go there and we would get to meet people, and it was like super awesome and amazing. And like, movies were our thing, and so like we would go to movies, and I'd be able to hang out in gyms, and that was fun. Like, there was just so many things that like we got to do together, right? Which I loved. But in high school is when I started developing my athleticism, and I realized, like you had mentioned earlier, that drew my dad to that, and he was like always around for it. It was like the coolest thing. And one of like my best memories with him is that in my hometown, there's like this really big invitational. And I won the invitational, and he did the same thing when he was in high school. Oh my God. And that was the first moment that I was like, wow, I made my dad so proud. And
you're gonna make me cry.
It was like, I still look back at that picture and I was like, it's like we were so in love with each other. I was so in awe of my dad and he was so in awe of me. And that was just like so cool.
That's satisfying.
That. So satisfying, right? Because like that was something that I longed for, because it was an in and out thing for him and I. When it was in, I did everything in my power to make sure that my dad wouldn't leave, that he can stay in that moment with me. And so then, but you know, as in high school, for me, I'll speak for myself. I became like a bratty teenager and I was too cool for things. And I was like, you know, who's this guy? He's my dad. Like, he's cool and I'm happy he's here. But there was like some things that, you know, I wanted to do that he didn't agree with, but I didn't feel that he had the authority to, you know, to discipline me or to say things I could or could not do. Right. I'm like, I've never lived underneath your roof. Who are you to make the rules for me?
Sir.
Right. Like, I'm just being so honest.
No,
like,
you're right.
You know,
you're right.
He didn't have that there. And so, you know, that's when I would say, like, kind of later into high school is when him and I started navigating our relationship in a different way, because as you get older, you experience more in life and you start questioning more. Yeah. And so it made me question of like, well, why didn't my dad want to be around? Or why didn't you want to show up for me in certain ways? Or don't you love me? Like, these are questions that I genuinely asked myself, because there was feelings that got brought up later in life. And when I got to college, I had like set a standard for myself of like, for anybody in my life, just I'm going to say family in general, of like, this is like my expectation here. And if you can't meet that as somebody who is my loved one in my life, I'm going to create a boundary or set, you know, in a way like a fence for myself that you're like allowed or not allowed in. And so with him and I realized that we just didn't have a solid foundation with one another. Wow. And so without having a foundation, like, there was nothing to draw from. There was fun memories to draw from, but the memories felt so temporary. Like, it wasn't anything that felt so long lasting. And so it was really hard for us to like continue to develop. And till this day, him and I are still navigating it. And it's great. You know, I'm continuing to learn so much, and I'm sure that he's continuing to learn so much too, but we're getting there. And I'm, you know, hopeful that there's going to be a better future. But that was just the reality, that it was a constant in and out, and we did not have a firm foundation. And so that really had impacted my younger years, and even impacts me now.
Oh my God. Ma'am. There's so much revelation in that. Like, I'm like, oh my God, tell me more. Right. It's crazy how many similarities we have in our experiences with our fathers. And it's important that you guys know that we're not coming from this in a sense of negativity. Like Jasmine said in the beginning, like, these are things we're learning from, and we're actually really excited about, because there's nothing better than awareness, experience, and being able to sort out our outwardly process, like, what's happened. Nobody's the enemy. Nobody's wrong. It's important to know that we just understand that we don't understand. Yeah. We've never been in the situations that our fathers have been in. I personally have never been a grown man who's raised or had 4 kids, you know what I mean? Definitely not. I've never, you know what I mean? Or 5 in my dad's case, right? Like, I've never, so I can't tell you what I would do or how I would proceed as a husband and a father, and how I would be so equipped or so ready in my environment to show up and be the best I can be. So again, we're really just, you know, communicating this and just chatting with each other. We hope you're enjoying so far. Jasmine, I wanted to kind of just talk to you about, you kind of were talking about like the way you set boundaries for other people, right? And you were like talking about in college how you were like putting standards on people that probably didn't even know anything about your history or what you were doing. And it sounds like your dad was like the basis, or your experience with your dad was the basis of how you interacted with other people. So I want to know what attributes like of your dad, since like he's he's kind of been a guideline in a sense, right?
Yeah.
What attributes have you found that might have seemed negative, but you've been able to pull out as strengths or as positives in yourself? You know, do you feel like you have any of those?
Yeah. When I was younger, a lot of people, I don't get it too much anymore. Sometimes though, people are like, you look just like your dad. You remind me so much of your dad. And I hated that for so long. I'm going to keep it so
If y'all
real
saw
here.
the passion on her face right now.
I'm like, listen, my name is Jasmine, blank, blank, blank. Like, relax. But, you know, for so long, because I felt people projected like who my dad was onto me, but the idea I had in my head was so negative. But now where I'm at in my life today, my dad is extremely athletic. I got my athleticism from that man.
Yeah.
Point blank, period.
Right.
I'm grateful for that. And my dad is determined as well. Like, he still runs till this day. He trains, you know, he is so determined in the field that he works in. He is charming and he's charismatic. Like, that is something I have watched my dad talk to people. I've watched my dad train people who are professional bodybuilders and whatnot. And the way that he communicates to them, I'm like, how did he just get you to buy into that? Like, I'm low-key confused. Like, amazing. Do you know what's actually like hello? Right? But so it's like, these are things like about my dad. And also like, I just, as he shared stories with me over the years, like I realized that my dad had to grow up much faster than he probably needed to be. Wow. And so, you know, there were situations that I personally felt and like that wasn't used in the best way, but there's those attributes that I just had shared, like those became my strengths. I was able to go to college on an athletic scholarship. Wow. And that was something that came from him. Like my determination, like I've, you know, shared previously, I'm in my mid-20s and I'm so career driven.
You absolutely are.
And I would say that's something that was pulled out from my dad because he was determined, even though he faced so many hard things in his life, he was determined to still reach the things that he wanted to.
Right.
And then just like his charisma, like I would say I'm a pretty charismatic person. And I think that's something that I got from him because like I watched how he interacted with people and like, you know, the personalness that he, you know, brings. And I was like, I want that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's something that I want. And like, you know, where him and I heavily relate is like, I'm the oldest sibling, you know, of all my siblings. And I grew up in a home where both of my parents, you know, like you weren't there. And so I did have to grow up pretty fast and, you know, be mature for my age. But I wanted that because I knew what kind of life that I wanted for myself. And I wanted it to be so full of goodness. And not to say that that's not something that he didn't want either. But I was so determined of like, I'm going to do my very best to have the best outcome and do it in such a way that it wouldn't negatively impact anybody around me. Because anybody who personally knows me, like if I feel like I'm stepping on anybody's toes, my world is shattered and I can't live with that.
Wow.
Yeah. How about you?
Oh my God. I feel like, wow, that was so good. My dad is, I would say he's like socially rich in a sense of like, I guess, are rich in social ability. My dad can like talk his way into absolutely anything, right? I've seen it happen and I'm like, oh my God, how did you do that? Right. Also, he's absolutely talented. My dad is a master landscaper. Like I've seen him just turn things into magic and I'm like, what? When did you do that? You know, he's great. Also, he's very like motivating and encouraging. And although I have seen him do that in a way, kind of like what you were saying, like in situations where I'm like, I don't think you're using your powers for good. Now that I'm older, I see the talent and not what he proceeded to do with the talent. Right. So knowing me, like, I feel like I've got that hardworking, like, you know, I've got that ability. My dad works his butt off and I feel like what I've taken is the social like richness. I feel like I've taken the idea that you can, talk your way into a situation, get to know the person, right? I've actually seen him talk his way out of, or not out of something, but like I was actually sharing this with you the other day. So story time. There was one day, so LA, I was raised in LA, and there's something called the Jazz Festival in LA, and it's very popular. And I remember when I first started driving, I parked on street parking, but street parking happened to be in front of someone's house. And it was me and my little sister in the car. And I was, like I said, y'all, I was new. So I was trash at parallel parking. And I'm parking in front of this person's house. And it was a man and like 3 of his guy friends. And they just started ragging on me. They were like, she can't park. Oh, little girl, do you need us to help you? Do you need somebody to traffic? And I was just like, okay, Shon, just ignore them. I don't want any trouble. Right? Because like, I literally was like, my dad, I'm gonna tell my dad, like, mind you, I was like 22 when this happened. Y'all, I wasn't like,
right.
But what happened was they ragged on me. So finally I parked and I silently walked to go meet my dad. And I was like, Dad, those guys, they called me names and they talked about me without my dad even asking me about the rest of the story. He was like, show me where they are. Ooh. And so he walks over, we walk down the street and I'm like, yeah, you're gonna get it. So he walks and talks to these guys. And all I know is the guy comes back to me, grown man. And he comes back to me and he says, hey, Miss Lady, I'm just so sorry for what I did. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, I didn't see my dad get aggressive. I didn't see them. You know what I mean? I heard him like tell the guy, like, I have daughters and my job is to protect them. He didn't curse. He didn't say anything, but he was literally talking to this man and helping him understand, hey, if you were me, what would you do right now?
Yeah, wow.
And he was able to turn a hostile situation into like this peaceful thing, right? And I remember being so amazed.
Yeah.
And then, he apologized and I was like, thank you, and I went on about my day. In my mind, my immature mind at that moment, I was like, my daddy protected me. But as I processed it, I started to realize like my dad has a way with his words. There were times that those words may have been manipulative. Yeah. Right? Right. There were times I saw them and I saw him use those words and they weren't very nice or they weren't for the right reason. But what I was able to see was like, you have a gift. You don't always use it the right way, but you have a gift. And so I'm grateful for that observation because as now, now in my career field, I love it. I'm able to be that in the most positive way I can be. So like I said, the hardworking, the motivating, the like go-getter type, and the like socially like able, the socially like mature person that he is, I'm like, this guy, so I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah. It's so interesting, like the more time that we take to really like think about like what are those intrinsic or like attributes that our dads have, like we get a better holistic view of like who they are. And it kind of relates to the next thing I wanted to talk about of like, how does the relationship with your dad or things that you know about your dad, like how did that impact your future relationships with future partners, with dating? You're married now. Like, how did that impact choosing your husband? Like, we got to go there.
Stop. Stop.
Yikes.
Oh my God. Okay. Y'all, and I knew she was going to ask that and I still don't like it. Okay. So I would say, I knew what I didn't want, but then I can't lie. There were things about my dad that I was like, why doesn't my husband have? Like, doesn't every man have this?
Right.
That protectiveness or that, you know what I mean? Wow. You're yeah. So I think it's important for me to note in my situation, like my husband grew up in a different household as well. And he grew up with a father that didn't have a father. So his father was drawing from almost an empty well, trying to be a good father. And he did the best he could with what he had. And so my husband was drawing from what his father was doing.
Mm.
So now I'm with a man that has minimal experience as a father, I would say. And then I have my, traumatic experience with a father. And so we're trying to come together and raise kids. Right? And it's hard. It's hard. It's hard. So what I would say is that I went into the relationship knowing I had nothing to offer when it came to that. I knew what I didn't want, so I knew what I wasn't looking for. But where that kind of screwed me up is I had expectations that my husband didn't know how to fulfill, and that's not his fault.
Mm.
So we went to premarital counseling, which was like a deal breaker for us. We were both like, hey, let's sort this junk out before we say yes, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. I highly recommend 10 out of 10, right? But what we found out is that thankfully my husband's father taught him, get a job, provide for your household, love Jesus. Oh, those are amazing things. Those are amazing things. But that's not all that you need to be a great husband and father. So although I will say my husband has literally never not worked, I've never wanted for anything. We've both been just very hardworking people. He's always loved on God, and he's always been present. There's never been a time I thought my husband was just gonna jump ship, right? Mm-hmm. But he had to learn how to do things that he didn't see his father do. So he didn't see his father be intimate with his mom. He didn't get the sex talk. Wow. He didn't get the this is how you treat a woman talk. And so there's so much lacking in that. And then I'm here raised in a house full of women, right? 3 sisters, a half sister outside the house, single mom, right? I'm raised in with a bunch of women. I have nothing to offer about what a man should be doing. I don't have a brother, right? Mm-hmm. Closest thing is my god brother, right? So I'm I don't even know what to tell you. So when it came to looking for my husband, there was really not much to draw from. I just knew what I didn't want. I knew that I didn't want somebody that I wasn't matching with or wasn't equally yoked with. Mm-hmm. I knew that I didn't want someone that was okay being without their children. I knew that I didn't want someone that saw me as less than. I knew that. And so it was almost okay, I have a bigger list of what I don't want rather than what I do. And I know that sounds backwards, but that's just my story. Mm-hmm. So pairing with someone with his experiences, you can imagine those first few years of our marriage where we're trying to figure out how to be husband and wife. And then year 3 is when we start having kids. And we're now we have to be parents. I grew up in a family where nurturing was number 1. Yeah. You were babysitting after you were out of diapers, right? So I knew everything. I knew everything about kids, but my husband did not. So for me, it was having patience and grace for him when it came to our kids. Like I said, his father was around, but there wasn't, they didn't spend the time together that my husband spends with his kids. Yeah. So my husband came into this marriage I'm going to do all the things I didn't get to do with my dad. And that's no negativity. That's no shot at anybody. It was just, I don't know what this is like. So I don't want my son and my daughter to know this life either. Yeah. So it's kind of we were drawing from kind of empty wells, and we were okay, well, what do we want? And how are we going to support each other? You know what I mean? And it's weird because, you've actually seen me do it. So it's there would be times where my son, would come to his dad and say something very random. And my husband would be okay. Mm-hmm. And I'm hey, he needs you to do A, B, and C. And he's oh, yeah, come here. Right. Yeah. The other day, my husband, my daughter says, hey, Daddy, I have a present for you. And she's giving him a dum-dum, a little lollipop. And he's I don't want the lollipop. And she immediately heartbroken because in her mind, I saved it for you. I picked it out for you. And I was if you don't want it, tell her a kiss is better or tell her a hug is better. This is a gift. Yeah. And he immediately clicked on. He was he was available to hear that and not be judged.
Yeah.
And he was like open to that. And he's like, oh man, like immediately clicked on it. And he's like, you know what I would love better? A hug. And she lit up and she's like, oh my God, my dad's the best.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to like draw from like this empty sack and be patient with each other and say, okay, how can I be a better spouse and father or mother, right?
Mm-hmm.
To these kids, because we both have these crazy experiences.
Yeah.
So when you ask like, hey, how does it affect how you pick your spouse? I didn't have much.
Yeah.
And it hurts, but it gave us so much to like kind of make a game plan. What do we want? How do we want our kids to see us? And do we want them growing up with issues in this department? Mm-hmm. I mean, they're going to have issues, right? They're going to think we're crazy.
We all got it.
But this won't be it.
Yeah.
So that's our experience. Like, and we're still like, we're learning.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. I mean, I love watching you guys co-parent. I love, even just like, I get to watch my uncle be a dad. Like, I'm telling you, when I first met both of your children, I was so in awe. I was like, this is so cool. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Like you were the coolest. Like I was like, you're just the coolest. Like you're the coolest dad. Like what? So I commend you guys so much for doing that. Cause I think that so often as people, sometimes it's like that, blank canvas. Right. You have to draw something. You have to create something beautiful. Like you have to be the one to take initiative. Like it's not going to do it itself. You have to make that you have to make the decision that you are going to be the person to make something so great out of something that was so empty to begin with.
Wow. Oh my God. So what about you?
I hate this question.
What's going through your mind? Because like you're so receptive to what I'm saying, but I'm like, what's going on in your mind?
Oh man.
Tell me about it, Jasmine.
What's so hard, has been very difficult for me is that I would very honestly say that I didn't grow up with very many examples.
Wow.
At all. Like, my dad wasn't underneath the same roof as myself. Mm-hmm. My mom, she got married later. And so then I eventually had a stepdad. But, my mom's dad, he was not there. He passed away. Even just like, my grandparents were around, but there was just the nature of that relationship as well. But then there was just what could have been in my immediate circle I didn't have. Wow. So I didn't see what parenting looked like outside of like my friends. Wow. And I think that was like a moment where things clicked for me of like, oh, so this isn't normal? I'm like, y'all got it. Right. Like what's happening? Your dad is, whatever. And so I say all that to say though, is that you draw from your experiences, right? And so I just did not have any. So I was like, well, just what do I do here? And I would say like I learned much later of this is what I don't want, because I'll share something about me. I had this idea in my head that I'm going to date people or seek out people who are nothing like my dad. Ooh. And
just deliberate.
And like, because I was a jerk and I jabbed at him and, and because that's just what we do. It's human nature, right? And it didn't mean I love my dad so much, but I was like, I want nothing like you. And you know what I mean? Because as women, we do that.
Understandable.
And so, but I didn't look at the internal things of men. I looked at their external situation. Wow. So, okay, I dated a guy who did have both parents that were underneath the same roof. So I looked at external things that he had that my dad didn't have. So I was like, yeah, he's nothing like him, whoop-de-whoop. Come to find out, internally in his like intrinsic things, we're just like my dad.
Whoa. Joke's on you.
Joke's on me. I'm like, sis, you tried. You thought.
You can't escape.
Right. And so that and that happened to me. And even to the point, like, I dated a guy and he never met my dad. He was very upset about it. But I was like, in my head, I convinced myself, I was like, you're the greatest thing. I want to protect us. Like, I don't want, you know what I mean? Like,
you're good. You're good.
Oh, and that's the thing. I manipulated my words with it. I did.
I would feel so special if somebody told me that.
Right. I was like, this is so special. I don't, because in the idea that I had of my dad at the time in my head, I was like, I am protecting you from this person. Right?
Wow.
Whereas come to find out it backfired on me because that individual, they hurt me so bad that I bet if my dad actually would have ended up being in the picture, would have met this person, I probably would have got a warning sign, because if my dad knew what that person did to me, he would have been at that man's house like, excuse me, sir.
Not if you.
Right. Like, he would not have wanted the smoke. But, so I think I projected onto my partners of like, I want you to be like nothing like my dad or whatever. But ultimately, there were certain things about my dad that I wanted a man to have. I know that my dad loves me so much. And so it's almost like I seeked out men who just like loved me enough.
Wow.
And that hurt so bad. And having to come to terms with that with myself hurt so bad, because it wasn't that I wasn't a priority in his life, but I felt like more of an afterthought.
Wow.
And there's nothing that's more hurtful than feeling like you're an afterthought to someone.
Oh my God.
Especially as their kid.
Yeah.
And that broke my heart. As I've seeked out relationships with men, I've been so hurt feeling like I was an afterthought, because I felt that way my whole entire life with my dad.
Yeah.
And so it was just really hard. And it's created like, I shut people out. I result to hyper independence because I don't feel like I can depend on a man. I will be the first to say, like, when it comes to commitment, I'm like, I'm gonna keep you close enough, but I'm gonna keep you far away enough, because that's what I knew. Yeah. Right. And so I think ultimately I never believed that someone would stay. So I would do everything in my power to keep somebody at a distance so that I could then like be in control.
Wow.
So here I am, 25 years old, and I would say because of like my experience and, I've come close to like a very deep love that I can see of, oh, this is why things didn't work in my relationships, is actually because it's a root that came from my relationship with my dad. Wow. And so now I'm able to, enter dating or enter into conversations with men and being like very like transparent of like, it really hurts when I'm an afterthought to you, or I feel like I'm an afterthought. That might not be your intention, but this is like genuinely how I feel. I need you to affirm me in this moment, or this is how I feel the most love. Like, I think I'm able to better communicate my needs or things that I want because I didn't have that opportunity, with the man that people tell you is supposed to be like that first introduction to love.
Wow. Oh my God.
That was a lot, but
no, that was so good though, because it's like, I'm even over here like, that's a lot of perception. And it's so rich because, so what struck me is earlier you were talking about like, your dad loves you, and you're kind of like, it's like this what if, like, if he were a part of your life, if you were consistent, yes, I'm sure that he would have protected you or defended you in a position that you would have desired to be defended or protected in. And it just makes me realize like, we do love our dads. We think they're amazing people, but I just don't think they know how to fully be amazing people sometimes. And do you ever like give it some grace? Like, I feel like what my thought process is like I said in the beginning, I don't know what it's like to be a dad. Yep. I don't know. There's so much pressure on dads, and I'm not saying that's excusable. That is not what I'm saying. Because if you could stick it in, you can handle what comes out. Period. I'm just going to say that. Let me just say that as a woman and a wife and a mother. But what I have to understand is like, I don't know what your surroundings plus your upbringing plus what you were dealing with at the moment. I don't know why you did the thing you did, but I had to grow some grace for like who you were at the time and why you chose this. And like, that doesn't mean that you didn't love me. That doesn't mean that you don't care about me. That doesn't mean that you don't want the best for me. But that's also hard to accept. Like, what do you think happened when you got to that point? Do you feel like you are at that point? Do you feel like you're trying to get to that point? Or do you feel like, I'm not there, stop asking me questions, Shon, you look crazy?
No.
What do you think?
That is so great for me. Like that, almost like that turning point, or like what was that like big moment is kind of what you're asking, right?
Yeah.
My thing was when in a way I had to like lay out the timeline. I kind of shared my timeline earlier, but like I had to like, in a way, like physically be like, what's the timeline here?
Yeah.
My dad was a kid who had a kid.
Absolutely. Yes.
So we were growing up, both of us.
Together.
Right? So it's like realizing that kids only have so much responsibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
You throw on a big responsibility like having a child. Why did I think that you would actually be able to provide for me the way that I might have hoped when you could barely provide yourself and you were still trying to figure that out? Wow. So that was like the big moment for me. Also, a moment was realizing that as my dad shared some of his life experiences with me over the years, and some things that he'd share with me hurt me at the time, but looking back at it, it helped give me perspective of realizing that my dad is just as broken as I am.
Wow.
And that's not my responsibility, and I can't fix that.
Wowza. Okay. I quit this entire podcast.
I quit. We're out. You know, the one thing, like, people, you know, ask you, like, what did you learn from your parents or whatever? My dad has said this to me my whole entire life. Life is about choices, and you have to deal with the consequences of those choices. I'm like, tattoo it on your arm. I don't care.
Sir.
Make it the bumper sticker on your car. And I'm like, there were times where I'm like, this is ironic. But, you know, it's just one of those things that I'm like, man, like that, why did I expect so much from somebody who was so broken? Or is so broken, whatever, right. You know, that may be, you know, because we all just, it's human nature. We go through stuff and things that are hard, and we just can't deal with some certain responsibilities in our life.
That's true.
And I can't be mad about that.
You can't.
I really can't. So that was one thing. And then the last thing was, there was a moment of forgiveness in my process.
Absolutely.
I am somebody who was like, I want justice for like all the things.
I want to see you burn.
I like, not to that extent.
I'm so like, dramatic. I'm sorry guys.
But no, like, I was just somebody to like, this happened to me, so you deserve to have something happen to you.
Ooh.
Dark, right?
Kind of, but I'm okay with that.
But you know what I mean? It's like, there's some things that happen in our life where it's like, it's the an eye for an eye.
Right.
Kind of situation.
Or I don't feel sorry for you if like.
Bingo.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly that. But I realized the apology that I wanted was never going to come. Ooh. The closure that I wanted was probably not going to come either. Like, there's so many things that I had wanted, and just realizing I'm like, it's either he does not know how to give it to me, or he does not have the capacity for me. So I have to let it settle in my heart on my own.
Whoa. That's huge. That's huge.
And it sucked.
That's so good though. Like, you're so mature for gathering that whenever you did, because you are 25. You're still a baby. Yeah. Like, God, I'm almost 10 years older than you.
Stop. We're not going there.
Okay. So like, but like, that's really big to get, because I feel like for me, I remember, so my BFF was my Gigi, but she passed away. She's my dad's mom. And I remember intentionally going to her and finding out more things about my dad, because I knew there had to be more. Like, I knew he didn't hate me and that he just wasn't like a jerk. Right. And so I remember like asking questions about the way that he grew up and what his intentions were. You know what I mean? And she was so wise in how she knew that he had a hard time being what I might have wanted. Like, he just couldn't be that. And it doesn't mean that he didn't want to. It just, he had his own hard times to deal with. And so it was really, it made me give him more grace. You know what I mean? Because I was able to say, okay, I'm looking at your surroundings. I'm looking at why you are the way you are and what you had to deal with. And then now you have to deal with some kids. Like you're still, like you said, your dad was growing up. My dad was trying to define himself, right? In such a crazy world. And then 4 kids, you know what I mean? And that's how can I, you know what I mean? And so, knowing that, even like me, we're in the same family, me knowing what I know about your dad and then knowing about the family that he's in, he had to deal with surroundings even within our family that affected his maturity. I feel that affected his process of growth. And there are a lot of things that I feel like he was able to do because of his surroundings. And that's not entirely his fault.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think we all had good intentions. Maybe his surroundings had good intentions on why they supported him in the way they did, but that support may have turned into something else. And you cannot blame that outcome. And so knowing what you know, you're like, okay, I have grace for you.
Yeah.
I understand. And it's less about you didn't do this and you couldn't. It's I see, and I'm ready to receive it. And that's a huge step. That's a monumental step for you to be as young as you are and like piece that apart, girl.
Thank you. Because it's not about whether you agree or disagree.
Absolutely.
It's not, because a lot of those things happen prior to when you were even involved in the situation.
Right.
So like you said, it's about understanding what you don't understand.
Yep. Yeah.
Man, this is heavy. But in the wake of the weekend, how do you feel about Father's Day now? With where you're at in the relationship with your dad and how you just feel about it in general. Like, where are you at mentally?
I'm in a good place. I feel like on the back end, I didn't grow up celebrating it the way the average kid might have celebrated it. Like, I don't know what it's like to like make your dad Father's Day breakfast in the morning or like, go buy him an ugly tie, right?
Right.
I don't know that.
Yeah.
I also like remember though, like making like Father's Day crafts in school. And I'm like, he's never going to get it. He's not here, and that sucks as a kid. But what I'm grateful for is like I said, when my dad kind of like came around in this like revelation season of his life, I was able to do things and celebrate him the way I really wanted to when I was younger. And that all happened when I was married. Like it didn't happen like, earlier than that. And so, I got to give gifts that I knew he liked, and he was so grateful. So I was learning even as an adult how to celebrate Father's Day.
Wow.
Because what I have to give like credit to is I have 4 uncles. My oldest cousin would like to say I have 5. I have a cousin. He's the oldest cousin. And he is my cousin, but he tells me to call him Uncle Aaron. Right? So essentially I have 5 uncles, and they did an amazing job of stepping in, and I can never, undo that. And so I celebrated them, but it's different, right? Because they weren't my fathers. Yeah. My goddad, amazing. He just helped me see things like, and he was like the one that would fix my car. He was the one that would, do the things, right? And so I'm grateful that I had like that snippet of that. But what I realized is like later on in life, finally having a relationship with my dad, it was just in time to now learn how to honor my husband. It was right in time for like my husband to become a father. Yeah. So learning how to celebrate my father, and then like, oh man, my husband is a father. Yeah. Now I'm celebrating him. So it's good now. But if I'm honest, I did not have a great experience with it when I was younger. I didn't know what that might have looked like. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, Father's Day for me was really confusing.
Wow.
When I was younger. My stepdad, he came into the picture and came into my life, but he had 2 kids. So he had 2 people to celebrate Father's Day with him. And so I was kind of like, well, do I do the same thing? I don't really know. This is weird. My dad sometimes would be, around for that. And then like there's other times that he wasn't. So it's just like this, like, I'm not really sure. Like I'm just a little bit confused as to like how I approach it. But I actually have a lot of really fond Father's Day memories. My dad and I's thing, we would do Mariners games. That was our Father's Day thing. Like, it was
dope.
So fun. Anybody who knows me, you get me to the 7th inning stretch, I'm standing up singing my little heart out. Take me out to the ball game.
I love it.
Like, just so fun and amazing. And like, that was my dad and I's thing. Like, we just loved it. Like, it wasn't anything super serious, right? Mm-hmm. It's just like, just a dad and a daughter, like, just having to hang out, you know. But eventually, baseball games stopped being so fun. Like, it got to a point to where I was like, we do events or we go to things and we have outings together, but our surface level conversation could only like go so far.
Wow.
You know, and because like I mentioned earlier, there wasn't too much of a foundation for us. It was like, what did we draw from? How did we dig deeper with one another? And so navigating that, that's kind of where I would say we started butting heads a little bit.
Wow.
And so Father's Day ended up becoming a really distant holiday for him and I.
Wow.
And so even now, like, my relationship with it, like, you know, I text my dad and I wish him happy Father's Day, but that's the extent of the conversation, you know, for me, like, in all transparency. But it's come a long way, because after the baseball games, there was a season where I did not wish my dad happy Father's Day whatsoever.
Oh my goodness.
Because I felt so hurt. Like, why, in my head, if I'm just really honest, why would I, in a way, praise somebody for doing something that I didn't feel like they deserved praise for?
Ooh.
And that's just me keeping it so real.
Yeah.
And
that's legit.
You know, there was years that it backfired and was thrown in my face, and that's okay. But that's, you know, we've come a really, really long way from that. Like, I can settle in my heart and be like, you know what? Without what that guy did, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
I like my life.
Yeah.
I'm grateful.
I'm here, right.
You know, but, you know, with Father's Day, though, it's something that I am so hopeful that it could be different. I'm hopeful for baseball games again one day. I'm hopeful, you know, for different like experiences, like, you know, for my dad to experience things with my sister and I together. Like, I've never had a Father's Day where my sister and I both hung out with our dad. We've never had that.
Wow.
You know, so I have hope for it, you know, regardless of how I felt about it in the past. I would say I feel differently, you know, now in my life. And like, I'm in a season of life where I'm looking forward that one day I will have my own family and I will have a husband that I can celebrate Father's Day with. So, you know, taking my experiences, but pushing it towards like a new season of life that I'll be in eventually.
Oh my God, that's so good. Yeah. I love that you are looking forward to the positive. Like, you know, I feel like there's so much that we can be upset about. But I mean, you said it, like, there's so much I'm looking forward to. Like, yes to more Mariners games. yes. You know, there's a +1 here.
Right.
Three's across. No, but like that is such a really cool tradition. And yeah, I hope that for you too. Because that's really all we want, is that develops from everybody being aware and wanting the same thing.
Yeah.
That's really awesome, actually. That's awesome. It's funny. We're talking about what we've been through, but like, you guys hear us, you know, we're talking about the good things too. It's almost like there's beauty in the struggle. Is that the saying that we're going for? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, there's a struggle, but there's something we can pull out of that. And do you feel like you have pulled beauty out of like your struggle? Even now, you know, you kind of spoke about the hope in the future, right?
Yeah.
So even what you're learning now, do you feel like you have a beautiful story to pull out of that?
Yes.
Tell me.
You know, I lived in a victim mentality for a really long time.
Whoa, sis.
And I think as people, you know, project onto us and they're like, she's a girl with daddy issues and blah, blah, blah. I was like, this is what we're not finna do anymore.
This is what we not finna do.
Right. That is a label that I no longer wanted. And also, like, why is it that was so negatively connotated on women when it was about the father?
That's Okay, that's a thing.
Right.
That's real. It's not my fault, ma'am, sir.
It's not. But yet somehow it's become my fault. That's confusing.
I'm labeled?
Right.
No, thank you.
So really, I say all that to say of like, I was living in a victim mentality where like, this is what he did to me.
Mm-hmm.
This is what happened in my life. Woe is me. I deserved better. And like all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
But the beauty that came out of that was pulling myself out of that mentality. Because that mentality that stemmed from the relationship with my dad, it stemmed into every other aspect of my life.
Wow.
I could play victim in my career. I could play victim at school. I could play victim in sporting events. I could like, it's the foundational relationships or like the relationships that you hold in such like high regard. You know, we so often let the things that we learn in our experiences from those seep into other avenues in our life. And so the beautiful thing that came out of that was like, you know, I'll share a story. When I was in college, I was running track.
Yeah.
A lot of my stories come from track. And I was so mad that I had lost one day. And I literally from my block was wrong, my coach didn't train me the way that he should have, like so many things that I just went down the list. And since my dad is so heavily attached to track and field in my mind, I was like, wait a second. I am responding in this way because I responded like this with this man my whole entire life.
Wow.
And I no longer wanted that. I wanted to be a person of integrity who took responsibility, who took ownership for their things. Right. And so like,
oh girl,
it doesn't sound beautiful, right?
No.
It's not fluffy, but it's like when you look at it from like a really big picture, like I am proud to be a woman who can say like, I am honest with my intentions.
Wow.
I take ownership of my failures. I have integrity when I walk into rooms or when I communicate with people. Like that's something that I heavily wanted to have. And so that is something that like I really took out of the relationship with my dad. And I'm grateful. I'm so grateful for that because I think so often we want to, you know, make our experiences be like water under the bridge, or we want to ignore them or like act like they, you know, never happened. And I was that girl. I was that girl who felt so ashamed because my dad was so well known within our community. And so like when people would be like, when's the last time you talked to your dad? Or, you know, people would like call me, he had a nickname. I'm not going to say it.
Okay.
But he had a nickname and people would call me that nickname, like in reference to him or just like bring him up. And I felt so ashamed. And I was like, I don't want to feel like this. And I shouldn't feel like this whatsoever. And so I just wanted to stop being the person who is so ashamed of my experiences and really just like embrace them, because I don't think that I wouldn't be the woman that I am today without any of those things happening to me.
Wow. Okay. Snaps for you. I can't snap on the mic, but snaps for you.
Yeah. And it's hard because I think I'm still navigating a lot of those things. Like there are times like I'm not going to act like I have it all figured out because I don't.
None of us do.
At all. You know, and it's like being in the season of life that I'm in, it's easier to beat myself up than not. But I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. That's not the life that I want for myself. I don't want to be like the 18-year-old who went to college and was sad that her dad didn't drop her off. Don't want to be that girl. No longer.
Wow. Wow. It sounds like you have had a great season of revelation. That's a lot. I'm so proud of you. Like, I'm so here for it. I'm so proud of you. I think that my biggest thing about, I would say, the beauty in the struggle is like going back to my earlier point, like understanding that I don't understand. There's so many things that happen that I could not put a reason to. So many things that happened that I was like, I can't make it entirely negative. You know what I mean? Like I said, I didn't know what it was like to be married and have 5 kids. And I didn't know what it was like to not, you know, be equally yoked with my wife and know how to do the things and then become this instant dad. You know what I mean? Like what I learned about my dad is like, he wanted a family. I don't think he knew how to have one. My dad was so proud of having children, but I don't think he entirely learned how to be a father immediately. And that was his story. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to be on one accord with it, but I have to understand that that's just not my narrative, and I've never been in that position. And so what I learned about him, or what I learned in this situation, is there's going to be times we're going to experience things in life and we're going to say, I wouldn't have done it that way, but I see why you had to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see what you had to go through to do even that. And to the best of your ability, you thought this was equipped. You thought this was readiness. You thought this was like the best.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so having to see it that way, I also learned grace. I learned patience. Can't tell you how many times, my mom was like, your dad is coming to pick you up. He's on his way. He said he's on his way. It's hours. Like, how long does it take to get here?
Wow.
Right. And I don't know, I don't know what that looked like for him. And I'm not saying that that's okay. I don't know what that looked like. I don't know what his intentions were, or what was really happening. I feel like the beauty of it is like, my dad is very, very talented. But I know that he's still growing in that talent. He's very talented. He's a gifted guy. But that talent can't be very strong unless like he's ready to show up fully in it. And so me being able to see that talent, me being able to see his full potential, me being able to see how gifted he is, like, I'm like, you've allowed me in this process. You've allowed me in this struggle. Mm-hmm. And I think that in itself is beautiful, because now I have patience with myself. I was able to see my dad just go through this evolution of change. And I'm like, is that why I process things differently? Right? And in turn, it makes me, like I said, look at my husband and want to create such an environment for him without compromising the health of myself, right? But create such an environment for him that he doesn't have to think twice the way my dad might have, or he doesn't have to feel alone the way my dad may have. And so for me, I feel like there's multiple lessons in this. I got to see my dad be transparent. I get to see the things about myself that I probably needed to have more grace for. I get to see my husband grow into a great husband and father, and what it looks like for a man to be fully supported in his atmosphere, and what it looks like for him not to be fully supported in his atmosphere. And that's hard to see. It's hard to see, because I can't imagine my husband right now having to go through the things my dad went through. Wow. I would hate to be a part of the things that my dad had to go through. I would hate to contribute to that when it comes to my husband. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. I would hate for my daughter and son to one day have this story and me be a part of it and not be the most positive thing in it. Yeah. So I'm able to see people differently. I'm able to see myself, my dad, my husband. You know what I mean? I'm able to see things differently, and I'm telling you, it's so enlightening. Yeah. It's hard because there were so many crazy bad times, but that's where I am, man. Yeah.
That's amazing, because like you're taking yourself out of the context. Or like, I don't want to say like an out of body experience, but it's like you take me out of it, and I can look at it from like a totally different perspective, and like you can see more beauty in it. You can have more grace for people, and like you can see the best in your dad too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I think is like so unique and something that we don't always do. Like I just want to be mad at you some days.
So, and that's okay. Listen. You are allowed to do that. Yeah. That's okay.
But just, wow, the evolution of you has been really cool to see as well, because it's like you're talking about like the evolution of him and how he's grown, but like you've done the same exact thing. Wow. And I hope that you celebrate yourself in that too, because that's amazing.
I try, because at first it was hard. There were times that like I know I must have reminded my mom of maybe the bad things that might have happened with my dad. And she might have mentioned like, you know, this is something your dad does. And because I knew how mismatched they were, I felt like, am I wrong for being me? Because there are similarities that I have that matches. And that was so hard. And thank God that me and my mom are in such a good place that we're able to talk about that. But just that confusion of like, is dad bad? Because dad was exemplifying bad things, right? Like dad was creating that for himself. But it had to take for me to like be such an observant person and grow and be like, that guy has had issues. Yeah. He's got a lot going on. Mm-hmm. And like I said, throw kids on anything and it becomes a bad situation. Listen.
I'm good. I'm just kidding, y'all.
Listen, throw kids, anybody, I don't care if it's one kid or it's 10 kids. Throw kids on any part of your life and it becomes a crazy situation. So I get it. I get it. I might not agree with the atmosphere, but I get it. Yeah. Right?
This conversation has been so good.
It has. We're so grateful. Just for you guys listening in, like I want to make sure that we're on the same page. That guys, we love our dads. Mm-hmm. We're just really transparent about the way that we've had to learn to love and understand them. In no way are we encouraging or forcing, you know, this idea of the way you have to process things. We're just telling you how we do. I'm not a believer in telling you how to forgive or process or you know, be transparent with people. You do what you need to do for you. Mm-hmm. We're just telling you how we've struggled through that and hopefully are coming out on the better ends. Relationships with parents, period, are hard because they are the first example of friends, right? Yeah. Siblings are your first like example. You know what I mean? Like, so it's of playmates. And so it was hard and it's hard. But I'm so thankful for you, Jasmine, and for you even helping me create the space of transparency, of vulnerability, where we're like, hey, how screwed up was your childhood? Hey, I got something too, right?
Yes.
So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for you.
Yeah. I'm so grateful for you. There's so many of our conversations that have created so much freedom for my heart. And I hope that by us having this conversation together, it creates freedom for others or gives permission or makes you feel like you have permission to have these conversations too. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for you. I'm grateful that we can talk about these hard things, but also feel the love and the truth within them, but also like the lightheartedness, because like you look back and some of these situations are funny.
Hilarious.
Like, let's be real. They're funny.
Hilarious.
But yeah.
So guys, we want to hear from you, whatever that looks like. You know, whether it's a direct message, whether it's a comment on the post, because this will be coming out after Father's Day. You guys, we want to hear from you. Let us know your feedback. Let us know how you feel. Thank you for letting us share this with you. Bye.
Talk to you soon.